Once again, good morning everyone. My name is Merlin Pradilla, an agriculture student of Mindanao State University Boog Campus. So, for today's video, we will talk about the basic concept of economics. So, capitalism. What is capitalism? Capitalism is an economic system in which private actors own and control property in accord with their interest and demand and supply freely set prices and markets in a way that can serve the best interest of the society. So, the essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit. It is this rational self-interest that can lead to economic prosperity. So, capitalism, uh, it is commonly refers to the private sectors or the private owners in which they have their own control in a property in accord with their interest and the demand of supply freely. They are also the sets the prices in the market. So next is the pillars of the capitalism. So first is the private property. So private property, it allows people to win tangible and intangible assets. So second is the competition firms. Freedom to enter and exit markets maximizes social welfare. Then the market mechanism. So market mechanism determines prices in a decentralized manner through interactions between buyers and sellers. So here we can see the relationship between the marketers or between the buyers and the sellers. The next is the self-interest. So if you people act in pursuit of their own good. So if you have the interest or the self-interest, you will be the one who will going to pursuit for your own good. Then the freedom. So choose with respect to consumption, production, and investment. So you have they have the freedom to choose with respect to the consumption of goods, consumption of the raw materials, the production, and their investment. So next is the limited role of government. So it protects the rights of private citizens and maintain an orderly environment that facilitates proper functioning of markets. So in the pillars of capitalism, the limited role of government is to protect the right of private citizens and maintain the orderly environment. So just for example, you have an private firm, so or private business, private or anything that is private, linked in with economics. So there is this government who are going to protect your assets or your properties. So next is the mixed economies. So mixed economies or blend of markets and government market plays a dominant role but are regulated to a greater extent by government to correct market failures such as pollution and traffic congestions. So promote social welfare and for other reasons such as defense and public safety. So mixed capitalist economies predominate today. So mixed economy, we have this the sole propriety, those who have the partnership, the corporation, and so on. So these markets are interconnected with each other. So they have their both common goals and perspectives, which is to gain profit. So next is the shades of capitalism. The shades of capitalism. So first is the liberal market economies. So exchange private information through non-market institutions such as the competitive market is prevalent in the bulk of the production process takes place in a decentralized manner into the free market capitalism. So, next is the oligarchic capitalism, state-guided capitalism. So, the government decides which sectors will grow. So, initially, motivated by the desire to foster growth, this type of capitalism has several pitfalls. So, excessive investment, picking the wrong winners, susceptibility to corruption, and difficulty withdrawing support when it is no longer appropriate, oriented toward protecting and enriching a very narrow fraction of the population. So, next is the big firm capitalism. So, it is composed of many investors, board members, or any organizations. So, big firm capitalism takes advantage of economy's scale. So, this type is important for mass production of products. Entrepreneurial capitalism produces breakthroughs like the automobile, telephone, and computer. So, these innovations are usually the product of individuals and new firms. So, however, it takes big firms to mass produce and market new products. So, mix big firm and entrepreneurial capitalism seems best. So, in a big firm capitalism, it is the firm which give or finances a big productions of individuals or big productions of firms. Just for example, the technology firms or the technology business. So next is the micro and macro, so the economic divide. So macroeconomics concerned with how the overall economy works. It studies such things as employment, so the gross domestic product, and inflation. So the stuff of news, stories, and government policy debates, the subject is typically a nation. How all markets interact to generate big phenomena at economics called aggregate variables. So the government is a major object of analysis in macroeconomics. So macroeconomics often extends to international sphere because domestic markets are linked to foreign markets through trade, investment, and capital flows. So macroeconomics means macroeconomics often extends to a foreign markets. Just for example, the big markets or the big entrepreneurial investments and the capital flows. So next is the microeconomics. So microeconomics concerned with how supply and demand interact in individual markets for goods and services. So the object of analysis is a single market. So microeconomics can have an international component as well. So single markets often are not confined to single countries. The global market for petroleum is an obvious example. So next is, why is it divide? Why divide? So there was no separation into microeconomics and the macroeconomics. Economists implicitly assume that either markets are equilibrium or equal, such that prices would adjust to equalize supply and the demand, or that in the event of transient shock such as a financial crisis or a famine, markets would quickly return to equilibrium. So there was no separation about the macroeconomics and the microeconomics, but the economists implicitly assumed that either markets were in equilibrium or unequal in such a prices, the prices and the adjustments of the supply and the demand in the market. So economic models, simulations of reality. So the modern economy, it is a complex machine. Its job is to allocate limited resources and distribute the resulting output among a large number of agents. So mainly individuals, firms, and governments, allowing for the possibility that each agent's action can directly or indirectly affect other agents' action. So in this modern technology, there is this complex machine that it is made to allocate limited resources and distribute the resulting output among large number of agents. So next is a useful model. So the standard model of supply and demand taught in introductory economists is a good example of a useful economic model. So its basic purpose is to explain and analyze prices and quantities traded in a competitive market. So the model's equations determine the level of supply and demand as a function of price, other variables, for example, the income. So the market clearing price is determined by the requirement that supply equal demand at that price. So this model is basically explains and analyze the prices and quantities traded in competitive market. So what makes a good economic model? So irrespective of the approach, the scientific methods, lots of scientists such as physics and meteorology create models requires that every model yield precise and verifiable implications about the economic phenomena it is trying to explain. So what makes a good economic model? So it is said that every model yield precise and verified implications. It is precise and it has a verifiable implications about the economic phenomena. So the supply and demand. So why markets thick? So perfect competition. The most fundamental is perfect competition, in which there are large number of identical suppliers and demanders of the same product. Buyers and sellers can find one another at no cost, and no barriers prevent new suppliers from entering the market. So in perfect competition, there are large numbers of identical suppliers and demanders of the same product. So the buyers and sellers can find another at no cost. So there is no barriers that prevent new suppliers from entering the market. So everything is perfect. So there were no barriers among the entering new suppliers in the market. Then next is the monopoly. There is monopoly. There is no one supplier of a good for which there is no simple substitute. The supplier does not take the market price as a given. So instead, the monopolist can set it. So monopolist twin is monopsony, in which there is only one buyer, usually a government, although they may be many suppliers. So when we talk about the monopoly, so monopoly is the what is this? It is the twin of the monopsony, in which there is only one buyer. So mono and monopsony and monopoly. Then GDP in three different ways. So first, the production approach sums the value added at each stage of production. So where value added is defined as total sales minus the value of intermediate inputs into the production process. So that was the first way. So the second way is the expenditure approach adds up the value of purchases made by final users. So just for example, the consumption of food, televisions, and medical services by households, the investment and machinery of companies, and the purchases of goods and services by the government and the foreigners. So it is the expenditure approach adds. So next, the third one is the income approach sums the incomes generated by production. So just for example, the compensation paid to employees, the rent paid to the landowners or the landlords, the interest paid on capital, and profit paid to the company owners. So these three different ways in GDP or gross domestic product sums up that everything has its own ways or own process. own process. So next is the monetarism. So the money supply, the total amount of money in the economy, is the chief determinant of current dollar GDP in the short run of the price level over longer periods. So monetary policy of the tools governments have the affect the overall performance of the economy. So uses instruments such as interest rates to adjust the amount of the money in the economy. So next is, so probably the most important is that inflation cannot continue indefinitely without increases in the money supply. So, and controlling it should be a primary, if not the only responsibility of the central bank. So, that was the end of my discussion. I hope you learned something from it, and thank you for watching. See you on my next video.